Hey ho everyone, Ginger Gargoyle here with a oops video. Actually, it's not so much of an oops video, it's just some tips that I found when I was trying to make the samples for my haul video from SMS from July of 2018. Okay. And it concerns my Big Shot machine. Alright, you know that this particular machine has this platform. Well, usually it comes with a much longer platform, but I got the mini one. So this is sold separately from the Big Shot machine. I don't know what the price is offhand, but yeah, but it comes with these two different platforms. This one is generally for wafer dies. This one is generally for embossing folders. And then this one is for when you're using things like your Knock Knock and Squishy. Or is it this one for the Knock Knock and Squishy? I think this one you can use Knock Knock and Squishy on. Okay, but generally, right on here it tells you what you can use these for. Well, my machine is 4 years old, and I have abused this thing. I mean, I've used it quite a bit. So my rollers are kind of out of sync, and I've dropped it a couple of times. So I have found that I usually need to shim it up. Well, I don't want to use the metal shim because that can take and damage my plates. So what I did was I took some paper and I folded it over. This is 3 half sheets, I think, of printer paper that I just folded over. It's really cheap stuff. And I put it on there. Then, generally, what I will do is take my old icky cut plates and put them down. Then put my die. Then put my... That's not what I want. Then put my paper. And then put my do not cut plate. Okay, a do not cut plate is generally a plate that you don't use for cutting. It keeps it nice and flat so that it has a nice flat surface for going through your machine. You can see that there's, I don't know if you guys can see that there's some stuff going on here with this one that I was using today, and I will explain why that is. First, I needed to find some paper for my demo. So I found some paper. Actually, I found 2 sheets of paper. So I ran this through once, and I did the letters first, and I found the letters weren't cutting all the way through. So I knew I needed to shim it up. So I put this piece in. Okay, between that and the cutting die and this, that was perfect. They cut out just fine. For this, they cut out just fine. When it came time to do these, that's where I made a boo-boo. I had taken everything from before, and I'll talk about what I had done before, and I accidentally stuck things inside, and I wasn't paying attention, and I put this on the top, alright, and then I ran it through. You see what I did? I cut through both layers. Alright, on the plus side, that means that my machine will cut through 2 layers of cardstock. And this is the heavyweight cardstock from Hobby Lobby. So I'm not exactly sure what the weight is, but I do know that it will cut through for the simple things. These more intricate ones, I'm not quite positive that those cut through all the way. And it even cut down into my shims. The shims that I had, it cut down into those as well. So, yeah. Here we go. You can see that it cut down through these. So it does do a fairly good job at cutting through. Now, what messed up my thing to begin with? Well, it was the damask. Alright, and I'll tell you what I did. I did not realize I was going to need my Knock Knock and my Squishy for this summer, so I left them at home, even though I had just ordered new ones. Alright, and so I figured, fine, I will do my regular thing with the shims, okay, and I'll place my die, or I'll leave the die on the thing, turn it upside down, put it in there so that the do not cut plate was on the bottom. What did I do with my do not cut plate? My do not cut plate was on the bottom. Then my plate and my cardstock. Okay. Oh, and my, okay. So it would go my shims. Okay. My do not cut plate. My die and paper. Then the black thing. Then the cut plate. And run it through. Well, I was noticing that this wasn't squishing out. Well, what I also wasn't realizing was that this was actually cutting. Okay? See my finger poking through? This was no good. So I went, fine, I need to switch this. So I flipped this and went down to this channel. Alright? Again, shims. Do not cut plate. Die and paper. Whoop. Okay. Do not cut plate, die and paper. Then I had to cut my thing for when I stamp, my pad for it to squish down into, because that's the only other foam I have, and my cut plate. And I ran this through. Well, I tried to run this through. This was too thick. So I went down to the last one. Tried to run this through. It was too thick. Took my shims out. Tried to run it through. Now it was a little too thin. So I sat there and I played with my shims and played with my shims until I finally got it to a spot where I could get this to go through. That's why when I flipped this back over and put everything back in, I accidentally did this. Put my piece that I was going to cut on top. Put my do not cut plate on top of the die and ran it through. You guys, you got to stay conscious as to what you're doing. Luckily, it's just scratch paper, but if this had been a metal shim, I could have really damaged my dies. So just be aware as to what you are doing. Don't be paying attention to the dog. Don't be paying attention to the, well, you got to pay attention to the dog and the kids, I suppose. But, you know, when you're doing this stuff, do this stuff. If you're too distracted, take a break for a while. And then use the right equipment. If I had had my Squishy, my Knock Knock, this would have been fine. I wouldn't have had any problems, and it would have been bossed just fine, and I wouldn't have had to go in and mark it with my orange. This is actually called Pumpkin Spice, and it's from Lawn Fun. So it's one of my little cubes. So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know what had happened. I found it rather frustrating because I was just having a really rough day. I kept hurting myself today. Although I caught a northern pike today, which was really cool. It's the first pike I have ever caught. And yeah, so my husband wanted to release it, and I was like, well, let's hang on to it for a while. And if we catch something bigger, then we can release it. But it wound up being the only fish we caught today. Or the only fish we kept today. My husband pulled in one, but it was a real small big mouth bass. It was under the limits. I think they got to be 14 inches, and this was only like 10 inches long. So he had to toss that one back, which was really sad because it would have made some great fillets for my father-in-law and my son for this winter. But hey, I brought in a northern pike, and it was fairly large. That one had to be about, at least 16 inches, I would say. The fillets were a good foot long, so yeah. And then, yeah, so, I mean, the morning started out okay, and then it just kind of went from there. So, yeah, pay attention to what you're doing, guys. That's all I'm saying. Okay? And then, these little tiny fussy things. Okay, if you want to get those out, you need a pokey tool. Now, you don't need the Tim Holtz expensive pokey tool. You don't need, actually, you don't even really need a pokey tool. If you have, let me see what I got here. Ouch. If you got needle nose pliers, and they don't have to be these kind, I mean, just a pair of pliers that have a needle nose to them, those will poke them out. If you have a pokey tool of some sort, this just happened to come with my weeding kit from my Cricut machine. Okay, but anything with a pokey tool or just a needle, a knitting needle, you can poke them out. Or, if you are very careful, you can use the tip of your scissor to poke them out. Okay, what I used to do a long time ago, before I got my pokey tools, is I would take tape. I really would, guys. I would take tape, and on the side that the thing was on, I would put the tape onto my die and press it down, and then I would take the paper off on the other side, and 3 out of 10 times I'd have a problem. But otherwise, it turned out pretty good. The majority of the things that were left, or that were cut out, were left in the die, so that when I took this out, I didn't have quite so many to poke out. But then I didn't really start getting into these really intricate dies until she started making them for her kits. So yeah, well, that's it for now, guys. I will talk to you all later. Learn from my mistakes. Use the proper equipment and pay attention. Bye-bye.